Don't be fooled by the smile. Don't be deceived by eloquence. There are people who speak like angels but think like vipers. You see, discernment is not suspicion. It's divine perception. It's the ability to see past personality and into intent. Some of you keep getting hurt not because you're weak, but because you keep confusing being kind with being blind. You're looking at how they treat you in public, but ignoring how they twist you in private. You're listening to what they say, but you're not discerning why they're saying it. And let me tell you something dangerous. Evil people don't always come with knives. They come with compliments. Manipulators don't always shout. They whisper. And if you rely on your emotions instead of your spirit, you'll fall for every counterfeit connection that looks like favor but is really a setup. You have to train your spiritual senses. Discernment is like an X-ray. It reveals what's under the surface. When you walk in discernment, you don't need to ask God to remove the wrong people. You'll see them coming. They'll reveal themselves in their patterns, in their silence when you succeed, in their applause when you fail. And you won't need to confront them in rage, because discernment gives you distance without drama. It's not about being paranoid. It's about being prophetic. And the reason the enemy hates people with discernment is because he can't hide behind charm anymore. He can't use the same tired script on someone who's no longer moved by flattery. Evil can mimic kindness, but it can't fake consistency. It can act righteous, but it can't sustain truth. And when your spirit is sharp, you'll catch it, not with your eyes, but with your discernment. Manipulation only works on the mind that's not anchored in purpose. When you don't know who you are, people will decide for you. They'll tell you what to value, what to chase, what to fear, and even what to believe. But when you are rooted in your divine assignment, when your identity is secured in the reason why God placed you on this earth, you become unshakable. Purpose is not just a path, it is your protection. You see, manipulators don't go after the strong. They go after the uncertain. They target the ones who are still trying to please everybody, still trying to be accepted, still trying to earn worth by approval. But purpose silences all of that. When you walk in purpose, applause doesn't inflate you and criticism doesn't shrink you. You become immune to emotional control. Look at Joseph, betrayed, sold, lied on, forgotten, but never manipulated. Why? Because he understood his dream. Even in a prison, purpose kept him. Even when they used him, purpose preserved him. You can't enslave a man who knows why he was born. And that's what the enemy fears the most in a person who is not just talented, but aligned, not just gifted, but focused. Purpose gives you the courage to walk away from anything that doesn't fit your destiny. It gives you clarity in confusion and direction in the midst of deception. Evil people will always try to distract you with counterfeit opportunities and empty praise. But when you know your assignment, you don't chase offers. You wait for alignment. And when your yes is tied to purpose, every manipulative door becomes obvious. You won't need to pray for clarity. You'll walk in it. You weren't made to be confused. You were created to be called. Purpose is your compass. Without it, you'll follow voices. With it, you'll follow vision. The moment you try to beat a manipulator at their own game, you've already lost. Because now you're playing on their field, with their rules, using their weapons. And hear me, you were never created to imitate darkness to win. That's not dominion, that's distortion. Manipulation is the enemy's native language. It's what he used in the garden. He didn't come with a sword. He came with a question, twisted truth, and planted doubt. And what did man do? He responded with emotion instead of conviction. That's the trap. You don't overcome evil by becoming clever at deception. You overcome by standing so firm in truth that the liar exposes himself just by being near you. The goal isn't to be more cunning than the manipulator. It's to be so anchored in righteousness that manipulation loses its power. There is a difference between being wise and being sneaky. God never called you to be sneaky. He called you to be strategic. Strategic with your peace. Strategic with your presence. Strategic with your silence. Strategic with your words. You can't fight unclean spirits with unclean methods. Don't compromise your character to get revenge. Don't sacrifice your values to get even. That's not victory. That's contamination. And some of you are exhausted not because of the manipulator, but because you lowered your standard trying to match their behavior. That's why you feel drained, because the oil on your life was never meant to flow in dysfunction. You can't carry God's anointing and act like the enemy at the same time. Jesus never manipulated the Pharisees back. He never twisted truth to trap them. He stood in truth so boldly, so divinely, that their lies couldn't breathe around him. That's power. That's how you outsmart evil. Not by becoming like it, but by being the opposite of it in every move you make. When you walk in truth, you don't have to chase justice. Justice comes to you, because light never begs to be seen. It just shines. The manipulator's greatest weapon isn't control. It's confusion. They don't need to overpower you. They just need to get to question your own mind. They bait you with loaded words, false choices, and emotional traps. And the moment you react instead of respond, they gain the upper hand. But listen to me. You are never called to be reactive. You are called to be wise. And wisdom doesn't panic. Wisdom doesn't argue. Wisdom doesn't perform. Jesus never let people pull him into emotional traps. The Pharisees asked questions they thought would corner him. But he didn't answer with fear. He didn't try to impress them. He paused. He processed. He answered in a way that flipped the trap and exposed their motives. Why? Because wisdom knows timing. Wisdom knows tone. Wisdom knows how to dismantle the lie without losing your dignity. You don't have to shout to win. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is speak few words with full authority. The manipulator expects a reaction, not revelation. They expect you to defend, not discern. But when you speak from the place of inner authority, rooted in truth, not emotion, you shift the atmosphere. You don't just win the argument, you end the game. This is not about silence. It's about speaking with precision. Your voice carries weight when your words are chosen in wisdom. You don't need to prove who you are. You need to be who you are. Evil thrives on noise, on drama, on frenzy. But wisdom speaks like a sword, sharp, intentional, and undeniable. So stop letting manipulators drag you into debates that don't match your destiny. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Your value is not in your volume. Your power is not in your defense. Your weapon is truth, delivered with wisdom. That's how you break the manipulator's rhythm. Not by shouting louder, but by speaking wiser. The enemy doesn't always come to destroy you. Sometimes he comes to drain you. Not with fire, not with force, but with access. And manipulators are masters of access. They don't break in. They wear you down with constant need, emotional guilt, false loyalty, and flattery wrapped in dependency. But let me tell you something many people in the church won't say out loud. Your heart is not supposed to be wide open to everyone. Love does not mean you're always available. Kindness does not mean you are always accessible. If you don't set boundaries, evil will. And they won't set them to protect you. They'll set them to use you. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are fences to keep purpose safe. And if you don't define your limits, manipulators will redefine your worth. They'll stretch your yes so thin that you start losing pieces of yourself in the name of being nice. But there is nothing holy about being exploited. There is nothing righteous about being silent while your soul is being siphoned by selfish people. Jesus had boundaries. He healed crowds, but he withdrew to pray. He spoke to multitudes, but he chose 12. And even among the 12, there were 3 he allowed closer. He loved Judas, but he didn't trust him. So why do you think it's unchristian to guard your space? Some of you are tired, not because you're weak, but because you gave full access to someone who only sees your value when it benefits them. The manipulator feeds off blurred lines. They thrive in spaces where you feel guilty for protecting your peace. But when you understand your worth, your no becomes just as powerful as your yes. It doesn't come from anger. It comes from clarity, from knowing that your energy is limited, your time is sacred, and your calling cannot afford distractions disguised as relationships. So don't apologize for setting limits. Don't feel guilty for not answering every call, fixing every crisis, or showing up for people who disappear when you need them. You were never called to be everyone's savior. You were called to be a steward of your purpose. And stewardship requires standards. Boundaries don't make you hard. They keep you whole. There is a power most people overlook in spiritual warfare, and it's not shouting, it's not rebuking, and it's not arguing. It's silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not fear. Silence is a strategy. Manipulators depend on reaction. They throw words like darts, not because they want answers, but because they want chaos. They want to see if they still control the temperature of your emotions. But when you respond with silence, you rob them of their favorite tool, your reaction. You see, Jesus stood before Pilate, before kings, before accusers, and sometimes he said nothing. Not because he had nothing to say, but because what they wanted wasn't truth. They wanted control. And when he stayed silent, he kept his authority. Sometimes your silence is not ignoring, it's exposing. Because when you stop defending yourself, you give people space to reveal who they truly are. When you no longer explain every decision, every boundary, every move, the manipulator has nothing left to twist. The wise don't rush to speak. They pause. They measure. They observe. Because silence gives birth to clarity. It allows heaven to speak before your emotions do. And some of you are missing divine insight because you're too busy trying to prove, defend, or explain. But there are moments, God-ordained moments, where your silence speaks louder than your defense, where holding your peace is more powerful than proving your point. Let me tell you something the enemy doesn't want you to know. Manipulators fear people who don't react. Because silence means you're not controlled. Silence means you're listening deeper. Silence means your soul is not accessible through emotional strings. And when you master silence, you don't lose your voice. You sharpen it. You save it for when it matters most. So stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop giving speeches to those who only listen for ammunition. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is to say nothing and let your consistency, your fruit, and your peace speak for you. Because when heaven backs your silence, no lie can stand against it. A manipulator doesn't need to overpower you. They just need to keep you distracted. Not always by attacking, but by disorienting. And the most dangerous thing about evil people is not what they do in front of you. It's what they do behind your focus. While you're reacting, they're planning. While you're explaining, they're observing. That's why in this life, especially when you carry purpose, you don't just need vision, you need observation. You need the ability to see what others miss because you're not rushing to speak or perform. You see, we were not created to live off reactions. That's how animals survive, through instinct. But you're not an animal. You're a son. You're a daughter. You carry the image of God. That means you are designed to lead, not just respond. And leadership begins with observation. That's why Solomon asked not just for wisdom, but for a discerning heart, the ability to see the truth beneath appearances. Manipulators fear people who pay attention. Because once you stop being emotionally distracted, you start noticing patterns. You see how their words never match their actions. You see how their presence only increases when they need something. You notice how their support comes with strings, how their kindness always circles back to their own benefit. And the moment you begin to observe without engaging, you take back your power. When Jesus walked into a room, he didn't just look at people. He read them. He perceived the thoughts of the Pharisees before they spoke. He saw the motive behind the question before it was asked. That's not suspicion. That's divine observation. And when you learn to live with that level of awareness, evil can no longer operate undetected. But here's the key: you can't observe deeply if you're always in a rush to respond. Silence creates space. Stillness reveals strategies. When you become a watcher, not just of people, but of patterns, you start seeing what God sees. And when you see what he sees, you move with precision, not panic. Because nothing exposes evil faster than the presence of someone who is no longer emotionally entangled, but spiritually alert. The reason manipulators succeed in so many lives is not because they're powerful. It's because the people they manipulate don't know who they are. Identity confusion is the open door for control. When you don't truly understand your worth, you will always be vulnerable to people who pretend to give you value. And hear me clearly, when you don't know who you are, someone else will assign you an identity that serves them. That's how the enemy operates. He did it in the garden. He didn't challenge Adam and Eve's power. He challenged their identity. Did God really say? The question wasn't just about the fruit. It was about who they were and whether they could trust their identity without needing more. And ever since then, the enemy has used the same strategy: make you forget who you are so you'll depend on someone else to tell you. That's manipulation's playground. But when you know your identity, when you know that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, uniquely designed, chosen, called, sealed by purpose and filled with power, you stop bending to every opinion. You stop shrinking to make others feel comfortable. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. Because identity gives you clarity, And clarity makes you dangerous to every manipulator who once fed off your insecurity. Jesus never chased validation. He didn't need approval to function. He didn't let the crowd define him, and he didn't let rejection redefine him. He said, I know where I came from and I know where I'm going. That's identity. And when you walk in that kind of knowing, manipulators lose their grip, because their power is not in their strength. It's in your confusion. Some of you are exhausted, not because the manipulator is strong, but because you've forgotten who you are. You've let someone else's opinion become your reflection. But when you return to your true self, your God-given self, the version of you heaven wrote before time began, you become unshakable. You don't need to shout. You don't need to prove. You just are. And when you show up with that kind of confidence, manipulation can't survive. It shrivels. It collapses. Because identity is not just your shield. It's your sword. Not everyone who cries for help is truly in need. Some people have mastered the art of using vulnerability as a weapon. They come to you with tears and pain, not because they want healing, but because they want control. And too often, out of compassion, we fall into their trap. We rush to rescue, to fix, to carry burdens that are not ours. But here, Meg, your calling is not to rescue every drowning soul, especially when that soul is trying to pull you under. Manipulators are experts at creating crises that revolve around them, demanding your attention, your time, your energy, without ever intending to change. They want to keep you engaged in their drama so they can manipulate your emotions, your decisions, and your resources. And if you don't have discernment, you'll become a prisoner to their never-ending need. You'll sacrifice your peace, your progress, and your purpose trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. They only want to be served. Look at Jesus. He healed many, but he didn't heal everyone who cried out. Sometimes he told people to go home, to take care of themselves. He set limits on his compassion because his mission was bigger than rescuing every broken heart that crossed his path. His focus was on restoration through purpose, not endless rescue that leads to depletion. You must learn to differentiate between genuine need and emotional manipulation disguised as need. Not everyone asking for help has the heart to receive it. Some want to keep you tied to them, dependent on you, so they never have to grow up, move forward, or take responsibility for their lives. Your yes should not become the chains that bind you to their cycles of chaos. You are not unloving if you say no. You are not heartless if you protect your time and energy. Your first responsibility is to steward your life well, to maintain your peace, and to walk in your God-given purpose. Because if you don't, you will lose yourself trying to save people who only want to keep you captive. And the truth is, the greatest way to help some people is to let them face their own consequences so they can learn to stand on their own feet. Your rescue without boundaries only enables bondage. Your freedom can be a testimony, but your chains will never be their freedom. Not everyone who cries for help is truly in need. Some people have mastered the art of using vulnerability as a weapon. They come to you with tears and pain, not because they want healing, but because they want control. And too often, out of compassion, we fall into their trap. We rush to rescue, to fix, to carry burdens that are not ours. But here, Meg, your calling is not to rescue every drowning soul, especially when that soul is trying to pull you under. Manipulators are experts at creating crises that revolve around them, demanding your attention, your time, your energy, without ever intending to change. They want to keep you engaged in their drama so they can manipulate your emotions, your decisions, and your resources. And if you don't have discernment, you'll become a prisoner to their never-ending need. You'll sacrifice your peace, your progress, and your purpose trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. They only want to be served. Look at Jesus. He healed many, but he didn't heal everyone who cried out. Sometimes he told people to go home, to take care of themselves. He set limits on his compassion because his mission was bigger than rescuing every broken heart that crossed his path. His focus was on restoration through purpose, not endless rescue that leads to depletion. You must learn to differentiate between genuine need and emotional manipulation disguised as need. Not everyone asking for help has the heart to receive it. Some want to keep you tied to them, dependent on you, so they never have to grow up, move forward, or take responsibility for their lives. Your yes should not become the chains that bind you to their cycles of chaos. You are not unloving if you say no. You are not heartless if you protect your time and energy. Your first responsibility is to steward your life well, to maintain your peace, and to walk in your God-given purpose. Because if you don't, you will lose yourself trying to save people who only want to keep you captive. And the truth is, the greatest way to help some people is to let them face their own consequences so they can learn to stand on their own feet. Your rescue without boundaries only enables bondage. Your freedom can be a testimony, but your chains will never be their freedom. In this journey of outsmarting evil and manipulators, remember that your greatest strength lies not in human cunning or force, but in walking in purpose, truth, and divine wisdom. Stand firm in your identity, set holy boundaries, respond with wisdom instead of reaction, and above all, let the Holy Spirit be your guide and protector. When you do this, you don't just survive manipulation, you rise above it, shining as a beacon of light and integrity. The enemy may come with schemes, but you will prevail, not by their standards, but by the power and authority given to you by God. Stay vigilant, stay grounded, and walk boldly in the victory that is already yours.